Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things DSO. I'm Beth Gaddis, the editor-in-chief at Planet DDS, and I'm joined by Brian Colao, the director of the Dykema DSO Industry Group. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, Beth. I'm so excited. It's that time of the month again for you and I to get together for All Things DSO.
Well, a lot's been going on, and I love catching up with you because you just have your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening. And I know right now there's a lot of talk about what people are doing for the end of the year. So let's dive in. What are you hearing about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a runaway train. Nobody
Oh,
knows
no.
where it's going to stop. I mean, we have this election coming up. I mean, it's sort of mixed results, right? We've had some very, I want to say favorable, but it's the unfavorable that leads to the favorable, right?
Mhm.
We've had some very unfavorable jobs data and unfavorable economic data, which leads to the big favorable of lowering the interest rate. So there's been some very positive news on that front. And I think everybody's almost positive that the interest rates are going to start to come down at this next meeting in September. But, it's going to take a couple quarters of that. You can't undo all this in one quarter, but that stuff is trending very, very well, I think, on the prospects of interest rates, going down in the short term. I think, this presidential election is like a runaway train. Nobody knows what the outcome going to be and where it's going to stop, but there's a lot of implications. I mean, either way, there's a lot of implications, and a lot of the M&A, at least that we deal with here in the dental industry, is depending in at least some part on what that outcome's going to be, and a lot of fingers are crossed.
So talk to me a little bit more about that. If so September 18th, it's 2 weeks away. If the rates get cut like we're expecting, what kind of happens then? What does that look like for the rest of September, October, and the rest of fourth quarter?
I think everybody's fingers are going to be crossed. I don't think, I mean, God forbid they don't lower the interest rates. God help all of us. But I don't think
Right.
anybody's expecting that. I think everybody's expecting they're going to go down. So it's just going to kind of be one of those things where everyone's like, all right, well, we expected that. Now we're going to have to see what happens at the end of the year. I don't think they're going to go down and all of a sudden the market's going to be reignited and everybody's going to go crazy. I think it's a very important first step, necessary first step, and then I think people are going to be that the attention will then turn to the presidential election. It'll literally be, all right, check the interest rate box, that's a good one. Now let's see what happens with the election. Then we'll go to year end and sort of look at some things like that. So and I feel like they will come down. There's almost nobody out there that's saying they're not going to come down, so I feel like they will. Personally, I think it's going to take a couple quarters of this. It's going to take the end of the third quarter, the end of the fourth quarter, and if that happens, we might be positioned first quarter of next year to start to maybe see some deal activity really tick up. I mean, I was encouraged. I did get a couple phone calls in the last 2 weeks, say, about people wanting to do deals, like, guardedly optimistic. They're looking at stuff, and they're not giant deals, but they're nice. They're not small deals either. They're nice middle of the road deals. So I'm personally keeping my fingers crossed that we can get these things closed by year end, demonstrate that the markets are moving, again. But a lot of that will come down to, I think, interest rates for the rest of the year, and then what happens with this election. It's just a lot of uncertainty still, unfortunately.
So I hate to put you on the spot, but it is kind of what I do to you usually every month. Tell me a little bit about, any predictions for multiples. I mean, if somebody thinks that they might be closing before December 31st of this year, do you have any predictions on what multiples might look like compared to what multiples might look like in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we already see. I mean, the reality is, for a lot of deals, I mean, if you're selling a single office, you can get that deal closed. Like maybe you haven't signed your LOI yet. You can sign your LOI in September, October. That deal probably gets done. But we know what those multiples are. Those multiples now for a single office is, they're down a little bit to what they were like in 2018, 2009. Those things maybe going from 5 to 6, 6.5. They were up as high as 8 at one point. They're not anymore. We know those. But say a $50 million deal or a $40 million deal. The reality is, if it's not under contract by September, it's not closing this year. I mean, those type can't those type of bigger deals that require a lot of diligence and a lot of other things, you can't just sign those things and close them in even 45 days. So I think the multiples on those type of deals right now in 2024, they're down also. I think if you had, say, 5 million of EBITDA,
Yeah.
that might have been a 13 or a 14 multiple if you were good, in 19, 20, 21. Now you're going to get a 10, for that, assuming it closes at all. You're going to, not to say you might not in certain select situations do a little better or a little worse, but, it's down. But still, for a lot of people, well, that's a decent multiple. I mean, it's a lot better than it was at the beginning of the great consolidation. I mean, that's the thing. What are you going to compare it to, Beth? I gave a presentation on this recently, and I said, what are you going to compare it to? If you want to compare it to 2021, you're going to be disappointed for the rest of your life. You're never going to be happy. But if you want to compare it to what it was in 010, 011, 012, other sectors of the economy, you're going to be really excited if that's what you choose to compare it to. But if you want to compare it to the DSO markets in the end of 2020 or 21, yeah, you may be disappointed for the rest of your life if that's what you want to do.
So, most times people have been looking at getting ready to sell their practice or their group, for several months, right? And getting everything in order. From a seller's point of view, what are people really looking for right now? Are they looking for still like a group that may have been formed by buying one practice here, another one over here? Or are they looking for a group that really has a lot of standardization and practice management systems, imaging systems, everybody's software can talk to each other? What are people looking for?
Yeah, I mean, different people, bargain hunters, others may look for different things. But if you're trying to maximize value, okay, what they want is a coherent organization. They don't want a duct taped organization. They don't want to be like, hey, we just ran around and got 15 of these things and daisy chained them together. And one's using Denticon, one's using, another company, we're not allowed to mention other companies on the show, but one's using another company, one's using another company. So they're not all on Denticon, and we got different PMS systems, and we've got, different billing and collecting systems, and they're all operating like silos. That's just not going to get maximum value. What they're looking for is a coherent organization where everybody's on the same, PMS system. I don't know what would a good one be. Maybe Denticon. How about that one? But, they're all on that. They're all, operating on a centralized basis, centralized billing, centralized collecting, centralized data reporting, centralized HR, everything is operating from, a centralized type thing, and it's a coherent organization. That's going to do a lot better than something that's kind of patchworked or duct taped together. Now, there still are some buyers that will, take a look at something like that, but you're not going to get maximum value.
I'm working with Mike White from CLA and Mike Montgomery from Live Oak Bank right now on an ebook about loans and lending. Talk to me a little bit about what you're hearing about that right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Mike Montgomery on a panel with me. I think he's busy because I was going to put him on the spot a little bit about
I can text him. You want me to text him now?
We already texted him and he said he's busy. But if you want to get him to show up in September, because I think that's what we were trying to do, point counter. It was going to be fun, but the lending environment is the toughest it's been probably in the history of the DSO industry, because DSOs were there, but not super explosive in 2005 and 2006 during the financial collapse. I mean, there were a few big DSOs, but it wasn't really, the presence that it is today. So pretty much the lending environment is the toughest it's ever been in the history, basically, of the DSO industry. It's very, very tough. If you're, have a questionable deal, God help you, you're not getting financing. But here's the thing. If you've got a good deal, a solid company, in a lot of cases, Beth, it's 50-50. It's like, this is a good deal. This is somebody that absolutely, an organization that should have no trouble, getting a credit facility or getting funding. And it's still a little bit like 50-50 or 60-40, on something that should be like 100%. And I'd love to get Mike here and give him a hard time about it, but it's not just him. It's all the banks and all the lenders are behaving this way. I feel like if the interest rates start to come down and things stabilize, that may change, but it's been a very, very tricky lending environment that started around 2022. And, it's been about 2 years of it.
At the beginning of this year, at the beginning of 2024, I heard of at least two pretty large DSOs, each one over 100 locations, that I thought they were going to be absorbed by another group, and neither one has happened. What are you hearing about some of those bigger deals that had been in the works?
Well, they were all getting canceled. I mean, the point is what's going to happen now, right?
Yeah.
If you want to rewind the last year, we're not going to name names on this show, but I could go through a who.
Do it, Brian. Do it.
No, I won't do that. But there's 15 or 20 DSOs I could go through that they pulled themselves off the market. They attempted to do it. They just weren't. Nothing wrong with the organizations. They just couldn't get the value they were hoping for in this marketplace. So if we're rewinding the last year, they were getting pulled off. A lot of smaller deals that weren't necessarily like as headline grabbing DSOs, but middle market got canceled. I had a $1 billion canceled this year. I had too many $20-30 million deals. Like I've lost count somewhere around April or May. I lost count of how many of those deals, got canceled. So it's been very frustrating. I mean, if we're going back to like the last 12 months, it's been very frustrating. 1 out of 10 or 15 got closed. I mean, no big deals, but even decent middle-sized deals, 1 out of 10 or 15 got closed. The smaller deals with decent regularity were closing. They were continuing, to close. But the big question is not, just the bad news bears, nothing but bad advice, nothing but bad news over the last 12 months. That's not what interests me. What interests me is what's going to happen now. The interest rates are going down. We have an election. Are we going to actually push some to the finish line? And, we need to. And I really hope that that's going to be the case here in the last quarter of the year.
Do you expect some of those larger groups to go back on the market then in 2025? Or do you think they may just have looked at what they could do themselves and maybe stay with their current PE firm?
There is probably 15 to 20 major organizations I can think of. Everybody would know who they are, that I think they're just in a mode of, at the earliest possible time, we're going back on the market. Like we learned a lesson, we tried, and we were not able to get it done. So we're going to be cautious, but it's ASAP. What is our time frame? ASAP. As soon as it's practical and there's interest and the climate changes and the environment gets a little more friendly, we're going to go back on the market. I think that's certainly the case for 15, 20 major DSOs, and probably 100 plus middle market DSOs that aren't as well known, to the general public, but they're there. This one's got 20 offices. This one's got 30. This one's got 10. I think they want to go as soon as practical. And that's what we're all waiting to see. When is that going to be as soon as practical? Again, the onesies and twosies, they're continuing to be sold. I don't expect a huge change for the rest of this year or first part of next year on that.
Now, are there any changes that are going on in the regulatory world, in the world that you live in?
It's very unpleasant, okay?
Oh.
The changes are that it's cash strapped right now. It's pretty tough out there. So the regulators are trying to get every penny they can for nonsense. I mean, a lot of the stuff, the public's not been harmed. It's not been a big deal. Like, take, for example, Medicaid enforcement. It's proliferated the last year or two. I mean, just unfair stuff. You could certainly understand if some organization committed fraudulent billing or did unnecessary procedures or harmed the public. You'd be like, yeah, you harm the public. Of course they're going after you. But when it was like, you needed to bill this within 30 days and you billed it on 36 days. So, the patient got the treatment. It was medically necessary. Everything was done correct, but you blew the deadline by a day. And now they want their money back and penalties. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of real ticky-tacky stuff that should never hit the enforcement desk, should never blossom into some type of complaint or formal investigation. And I'm seeing it all over the place. I'm seeing it labor and employment. I'm seeing it Medicaid. I'm seeing it private, insurance companies auditing. I'm seeing, it's what I call gotcha infractions. Like, gotcha. 1 mile over the speed limit, got you. Nobody was hurt, wasn't a problem, but they, it was technically a violation, and they're going to try to get some type of penalty out of it. And it's a difficult environment. It's very hard to operate in that environment because no organization is perfect. And to me, the test should be one of common sense. If you harm the public, harm the patient, do something deceptive, of course you should be held accountable. But if it's a ticky-tacky technical violation and one you can easily correct, we really shouldn't be recouping dollars for those sorts of things. And unfortunately,
for anybody who might be listening in and being like, oh gosh, could that apply to me? Can you give me an example of something that came up with, staffing, for example, or labor that you want to pass along?
Well, yeah, I mean, pretty consistently, right? I don't know that there's one. Pretty consistently, we've seen if you're improperly classifying somebody as exempt, should be hourly. Now they're coming. If you got somebody as an independent contractor and they need to be a W-2, they're coming after you.
Yeah.
If got alternative work weeks in places like California and other places, and you haven't filed that with the Department of Labor, they're coming after you. Meal breaks, rest breaks, you're not properly recording that, they're coming after you on that. In the billing context, I've seen it where, they bill it under the wrong name. The patient got, there's no question the patient was properly treated. It was medically necessary, but somebody inadvertently billed it to the wrong doctor. Now they want their money back. How about we fix it? How about we look, the patient was treated, everything was good. Oops, it was under the wrong name. Let's adjust the record and put it under the right name and we all move on. How about that? It's like, no, we want our money back. We want this, it's that kind of stuff that I'm seeing, kind of all over the place.
Well, it just takes a lot of time to address as well, right? To like research it and, fight it and go back and forth. And all of that time would be better spent, improving patient care and improving access to care.
I mean, things like you didn't date the medical records. Okay, sorry, we know the date. Can we fill it in? No, we want to put that. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, I give another 10 examples, but ticky-tacky stuff, it wasn't signed. You didn't date it. It inadvertently got under the wrong doctor. You were supposed to bill this. Here's a great one. You were supposed to bill this appliance when it was delivered, not when it was in the treatment plan. Okay, but the patient got it. They received it. We want our money back. It's just that kind of stuff. And it's very frustrating.
Well, as we're in September, this is a time when a lot of companies are starting to do the 2025 budgeting if they haven't already begun.
Start with Dykema. Start with the Dykema conference. That needs to be the first line item on your ledger. And then, maybe we'll pay the rent and do some other things under that. But the Dykema conference needs to be number one on everybody's 2025 budget.
Hey, I've already budgeted it. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and just book my hotel and flight as soon as we get off this call.
They might sell out by January. So you're pretty smart to do that.
Well, I know it definitely does for exhibitors. So I wouldn't be surprised if it does for attendees as well. Just to say it again, it was so much fun this year. I mean, it was truly just a great time, great content, great energy. The networking was amazing. And just kudos again to everything that you
I got to top it next year. It's going to be tough. But I'll tell you this, Planet DDS is going to have a big presence next year. I can tell you that.
We would like to come back again with Ben, our videographer again. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we'll do a little, we'll keep the suspense, Beth, and maybe second quarter of next year, we'll release some tidbits and juicy details, but Planet DDS is going to have a really big presence at our event. I know that for a fact, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, that is fantastic. So besides, us budgeting for it, let's talk about DSOs and kind of what they should be budgeting for expenses and for overhead and what advice you have.
Yeah, I mean, most of that stuff has been worked out most of this year. There's been some difficult layoffs, some difficult cuts, some difficult restructuring of debts and things. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of new issues in 25 because it's just been so ugly in 24. Yeah. I don't know that there's much more to be done. Most of the pain occurred this year. What I'm hoping will happen is the interest rates will go down, maybe a couple cuts, the free cash and the EBITDA will go up, and people could even hire some more and budget for some more things that had to get cut. I don't know, Beth, something like a new PMS system, maybe
that sounds good to us.
They weren't able to afford it. Now they can't. I don't know, but things like that, I think that got postponed. I mean, a lot of capital. Certainly a PMS system is one, but there's lots of capital expenditures and other things that got postponed. A lot of things really that disappointed me that could help same store growth. They really, really would, but you had to pay a subscription fee or you had to invest a little bit and people held off doing that. I'm hopeful that if the interest rates go down, the cash will free up and people will be able to do those things because this same store growth is here to stay. That was a necessity of maybe the M&A stuff, but I don't really see an environment. I mean, I do see where M&A M&A fires back up again, but I don't see an environment where it's like, okay, we're back to doing M&A, so same store growth is canceled. Nobody cares anymore. No, I think it's a tremendous way to increase EBITDA. So I think that's here to stay. And it may be in tandem with M&A. When M&A starts really firing back up, you're going to do those deals over in Department A, but in Department B, we're still going to be focused on same-store growth. I mean, that phenomenon is here to stay.
Well, and I mean, I used to be the marketing director at two groups, one that had 176 locations and another one that had 280 locations at the time. And you need to have that same store growth. You can't just rely on mergers and acquisitions to grow your company. And more than that, this year, hopefully people have really figured out those really best practices and created SOPs that are written down and can be shared out. So as you bring on new locations or de novos and you're opening up, you have a playbook that people can follow. So you have consistent, standardized success across your entire organization and predictability.
No, I think that's really, really important, to have that. I think integration is going to be important. That's something, we haven't talked about quite yet today on this show, but I've talked about it many times. The more technology that's integrated, the easier it is to use some of this stuff, and everybody's picking on a little bit, all the PMS companies about saying the more of this stuff you get integrated, the easiest it is, because you don't want to have to close out the viewer box, open up another one to use a tool. I hope we'll get to the point soon. And I know, for example, I know Planet DDS is working on this. I've had many discussions, but I think the other companies that we don't name on this show are also working on it too. And they have to. I mean, they have to. You have to have open architecture, and you have to have, integration, or it's holding things back.
I've been on the software side of things now for almost 7 years, and it used to be all in one, right? Every practice management system is like all in one solution. You won't need anybody else. Like, we're going to do it all. And now it's really flipped, and it's more, I mean, at least for the ones that are advanced, like Planet DDS, it's this idea that there's other companies out there, your Pearl, your Overjets, for example, with the AI, that are specializing in something. And so you want to make it easy through APIs that they can, work with your data in, read, write fashion. And that just makes it life easier for everybody, because you're making sure that everyone has access to the solutions that they want to use and that innovation, and you're not holding anybody hostage.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, there was a fascinating article. I fly American Airlines, and there was a fascinating article about all this. You can't drag the customer into your issue. You know what I'm saying? The customer has to have choice. And if you read some articles recently on, My Airline American, they had this policy where if you didn't have an approved, they were fighting with the travel agents, and they wanted to have approved travel agents, which is fine. I mean, they can do that. That's no problem. The mistake they made is, for a while, they canceled it. They canceled the program. And I think somebody might have even been replaced or something at the organization. But it basically said, if you don't use an approved travel agent, you don't get points, loyalty points, and miles. And there was your cardinal sin. You don't drag the customer into that problem. You can fight with the travel agents all day long. And as it applies to dental industry, they can argue all day long, but you don't drag the customer. And as soon as you say something like, if you're using, Planet DDS, you have to use this AI company and only this one, and no other. Yeah, I mean, now you're dragging the customer into your problem. And, you'll have customers that say, no, we don't want to use A, we want to use B or C. And your platform doesn't support that for us. And if it doesn't, that's an example of dragging the customer into your issue. And it never ends well. It never ends well. And like I said, I know that Planet DDS is working on this, and the other companies are, because you have to be able to support, meet your customer with whatever solution they want to use, whether it's patient finance, whether it's membership plans, whether it's diagnostic AI. You got to support whatever they want to use. The example, Beth, you've heard me many times with the smart TV. Yes. Could you imagine if you bought one TV and, this TV is for Netflix, but if you want Disney, you got to get this one. If you want Paramount, you got to get this one. If you want Hulu, I mean, the public would be a riot. It would never work. You got to have one TV that it doesn't matter what TV company it is. You can run Netflix, Prime Video, Paramount, Disney, whatever you want, it's all in there and you can operate it, because it's just got to be that way. And dentistry's got to be like a smart TV where all the systems integrate with everything so that the customer can use whatever they want. When you start to pick favorites or do something and you bring the customer into it, you get to like my American Airlines example where there was an uproar, like a whole bunch of people threatened to go to other airlines. And my understanding, I read an article in one of those travel magazines, they said, yeah, we're not gonna, everybody gets points for whatever travel agency you use. We're not going to drag the customer into this, into this problem.
Well, speaking of airlines, I heard an interesting analogy the other day, actually from our CEO at Planet DDS. And he was talking about how, with airlines, they use predictive AI. So they can basically tell based on who's booking and what they've done in the past. Are they likely to cancel? Are they likely to, require a certain kind of seat? And all of this kind of stuff goes on in the background to help you make a booking more efficient. What kind of predictive analytics do you think are going to be happening in the dental industry in the next year or two?
Okay, well, in the dental industry, I feel like we're going to be good. In society in general, I'm terrified.
Tell me more.
Well, these supercomputers are getting like the next evolution of AI is they're going to predict what you're going to do. I mean, think about it. A computer can process, I know we all think we're smart and we're unique and we're all our authentic selves, but we're like a species on this planet. Okay. If you're like, an omnipresent being like a supercomputer, you're looking at it and you're saying, yeah, there's 6-7 billion of these people and we're going to watch how they behave. And the sad thing is the supercomputer has concluded that there's only so many ways we behave. And when we do this, we're probably going to do that next. And when we do these 3 or 4 things, we're going to do that. And the computers they're getting there where give it a couple more years, they're going to be able to just like look at somebody, and say, we have looked at, X trillion of these interactions. And we know, just like on National Geographic, if you've got a biologist and he's like, here's an ant, and that ant is about to go eat that piece of thing, and then he's going to take it to the colony, and we know exactly what the ant's going to do. I hate to say it because we're humans and we think we're special, but we're not that special to the supercomputer. The supercomputer is going to get to the point where they're like, this human being has done these 3 things. So based on that, their next move is right here. And it's scary with respect to a lot of things. It's scary with respect to purchasing. It's almost going to be like you brought a knife to a gunfight because they're going to press your buttons and make you buy whatever, this person, Beth, whenever she does this, it means she's going to buy a pocketbook. So let's flood her with pocketbook advertisements. And then it's going to be like taking candy from a baby. You're going to order exactly what they want. In the scary thing is in like military applications, we know truck's going to be over here. So let's launch the missile over there and blow it up. I mean, it's really frightening for like the human race.
It's in everything. I mean, have you seen it with relationships where now they're saying that they can put in your profile and whomever you're dating and basically all this information and predict whether or not you'll like have a happy marriage or not, or how many years you'll stay married. I mean, it's crazy.
The problem with that is deception and bad faith. If you're acting in good faith, like let's say I've got the tool, you're a single girl, Beth, and I got the tool to match you up with somebody that's going to make you happy. I mean, if we're acting in good faith and I really match you with somebody and you're like, I love this person, this is great. Well, that's wonderful. But unfortunately,
well, that's already around, by the way.
Well, the problem is the hackers and the cyber criminals get a hold of it and they're going to match you up with fake people that think you're in love with, but they're really playing you for some other motive. And that's my problem with it. If you're acting in good faith and you're really matching people up and they're happy, well, how can you complain about that? But it's going to be subject to manipulation and abuse. But, in the dental industry, I'm really excited because I think it's actually good. They're going to look at somebody's dental condition. They're going to scan their mouth or something, and they're going to say, we've seen several trillion of mouths like this. Right. Based on what your mouth looks like, you're going to get a cavity in approximately 721 days. You're going to get a cavity right here if we don't do something. Or based on looking at this, you're going to lose this tooth in approximately 2 years and 3 months. And that stuff will be very, very valuable to the clinicians and the practitioners and the folks. Because if they looked at you and said, Beth, if we just leave your mouth the way it is, you're going to lose that tooth in 3 years, 7 days, somebody can maybe do something or take some action to correct it. So as it pertains to dentistry, I'm really excited about this predictive AI. As it pertains to like the human race, like I'm a little bit scared about all that, but yeah.
Well, Brian, we are out of time. It is just a
Alrighty, I
joy
mean,
always when we talk.
interesting. You always tell me I have to go right when it gets interesting, but I do.
Well, I
Everybody's
keep
got
saying we need to have a part two. One of these times we'll be in the same place and we'll be able to continue the conversation for longer. But thank you
everybody's
so
got stuff
much.
to do. They can't just listen to us all day. I get it.
You know what? I feel like they should just make the time to listen to us because I think that these conversations could go on for, quite a while with
I have
lots
a
of
lot of fun. I have
tidbits.
a lot of fun doing this.
You have a lot of stories.
I do.
Well, thank you so much. And for more information for everybody who's watching, if you would like to have more information that helps you and your group, please visit planetdds.com. Thank you.